This game rules. If you've ever wanted a playable experience that makes you feel like you and Spider-Man are one, this is the... Hey, get this game off screen. What do you think we're doing here? This isn't the game I'm covering this week, alright? We talked about this. Do it right. Now, this game rules. Let's talk about it. Spider-Man, also known as Spider-Man 2000 for the year it was released on a plethora of consoles. As per usual on my channel, we'll be playing it on the N64. But don't worry, this time I've done my due diligence and I'll be covering a bit of what was taken out of this version of the game as well, as I just felt like this game, out of all N64 titles I've covered in the past, deserves a thorough look. Spider-Man 2000 is such a well done game. From the character controls to the combat systems to the levels and boss designs, this game is just a treasure. For our control of the character, things are kept relatively simple. We can run in all directions, the camera will follow the way we're facing as soon as we stop walking, or can be tracked straight behind Spider-Man at any point by pressing the Z button. We've got a really high jump that will seamlessly stick us to any walls or ceilings that we jump into to climb around on them, and of course we can swing around with our web shooters. Honestly, the climbing in this game really impressed me. There wasn't a single time where I felt confused by the controls. Somehow, all the way back in 2000, they managed to get a climbing system that, despite the angle I was holding onto a surface, I found really easy to control. The directions just make sense, and there's never a moment where you climb the wrong way only to realize it's because you're sideways or upside down or something. The direction you climb with the directions you press on your stick always makes sense no matter where the camera or the Spidey is positioned, and I just really didn't see that coming. I thought the climbing would be the clunkiest part of this game. On the other hand, while not clunky, the web swinging is a little stiff. In this game, you won't be swinging freely like you would in the latest Spider-Man video game releases. Rather, we can only swing in one solid direction, and only as long as there's a wall or platform close enough ahead of us that it can track us to. This doesn't take any points away from the game for me though, as I found this system perfectly usable and quite fun to get the hang of. What might at first come off as a bit of a rigid swinging system quickly turns into a system you'll be able to use in many parts of the game to fly through levels like it's nobody's business. This is helped by the fact that you can press the jump button to abandon your set swinging path at any time. I ended up using this function throughout a huge portion of the game, and I really came to like it. Aside from our movement options, we also have some combat controls, of course, only one of which has any real depth to it. Firstly, we have a punch button. Pressing it repeatedly will give us a 3-hit combo, and the same goes for our kick button. The melee combos can be mixed and matched to a certain degree by using punch punch kick or kick kick punch, but if you do something like one punch and then a kick button, your combo will be stopped after 2 hits. I guess if you switch from one button to the other, it'll always end your combo, whether at 2 hits or 3. Kind of a weird design, but just go for a 3-hit combo and you'll be fine. There's no real need to switch between punches and kicks that I realized. While these combo options aren't very deep on their own, our web shooter mechanics are. Just look at this snippet from the manual for this game and you'll see what I mean. We have all sorts of different controls we can do with this thing. We can spray our opponents to keep them from moving around, coat our fists in webs for what I assume is probably higher damage, we can fire web balls that damage the opponent at range, we can shield ourselves from all damage and come out with an explosive burst, and we can even throw our enemies around with our web pulling mechanics. I was actually blown away at all the things I was able to find while messing around with it, and looking at the controls in the menu just showed me how deep it really went. It can be pretty easy to get one of these web shooter options by accident if you're holding a direction when you go to use the regular web shot for your opponents, but through experience came more care in exactly how I was pressing these buttons, and I got used to it pretty quickly. Now, in regular levels, fighting enemies actually isn't required, so you can just fly straight past them in most scenarios, but where we find actual boss fights, this game really turns up the heat. The first boss in this game, Scorpion, put me in my place real fast. Scorpion showed me that in order to beat him and move on, I needed finesse. I needed to find the combat style that we so often see from Spider-Man and become evasive during my assault. Good movement is as important as getting your damage in with this game. The bosses are almost always able to tank the 3rd hit of your combo to return with their own, dealing massive damage, so you're gonna have to remain light on your feet. Conveniently, you are able to jump right out of your 1st or 2nd hits faster than they can hit you back in most cases, but it's easier said than done. Playing all the way through this game really forced me to become good at using the controls provided to me. In terms of bosses, we've got all sorts coming straight out of the comic books. We've got Scorpion, Rhino, Venom, Mysterio, Doc Ock, Carnage, and even Monster Ock. As far as I could find, Monster Ock is original to this video game, and it's simply Carnage's symbiote falling off of Cletus Cassidy and latching onto Doc Ock. Facing off against all these iconic villains was extremely cool, and the fact that the symbiotes broke out of the webs pretty much instantaneously was a nice touch. It really makes you approach different bosses in their own way rather than applying a one-size-fits-all strategy to each one, and I liked that part of the game a whole lot while I was playing through. From the various level settings, to the controls we used to move through them, to the boss fights, to the overarching story of the game, I had a very good time playing through this one. There are a couple training modes that you can play in order to sharpen your skills with the character, and we have many hidden collectibles throughout the game as well. These unlockables are just different comic book covers from the Amazing Spider-Man series of comics, which I enjoyed quite a lot, but there is another set of unlockable items that I liked even more. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, what good would a Spider-Man game be if we didn't have alternate Spider-Man costumes to play around with? All of these costumes come with their own special effects that alter the gameplay experience too, just like those fancy newer titles have, so let's get into them. First, we have Spider-Man 2099. This is a great version of Spider-Man, although the colors on this suit don't look entirely accurate here. I would have gone with a darker blue and a redder red if I were the one putting this together, but it looks pretty badass either way. With this suit, we have attacks that deal double damage. Next, we have the Venom suit. This suit looks as good as you'd expect and gives us the added bonus of having unlimited web cartridges rather than having to rely on picking up item drops on our way through the levels. Then we have the Captain Universe Spidey suit, which, of all things, I did not expect to see here, but I'm glad I did. It's definitely a pretty cool look, but leaves a little bit to be desired when looking at his portrayal in the comic series. With this suit though, we are completely invulnerable, we have unlimited webs, and we have double damage. Basically, we have the last two suits in one, plus we can't take any damage at all. Moving on, we have a fresh looking suit in Spider-Man's regular color scheme called Spider-Man Unlimited. I love the look for this guy, and the ability it gives us is to turn invisible on command. It doesn't work in boss fights, but it definitely would make playing through the regular levels a breeze compared to the regular suits. Next, we have Scarlet Spidey, which has become one of my all-time favorite looks and favorite alternative Spider-Man stories following character Ben Reilly. This costume is purely visual, and it gives us no added benefits while using it, but honestly, the costume itself would probably get me to use it over the others anyways. I just love the Scarlet Spider. Following this one, we have yet another costume that gives no gameplay changes, worn again by Ben Reilly. I guess the Scarlet Spider was worn when he thought he was the real Spider-Man, and this Ben Reilly costume was worn after he found out he was indeed just a Spider-Man clone. Second to last, we have Quick Change Spidey, which is just Peter Parker with the mask, gloves, and shoes of his Spidey suit, and because this suit was so quickly thrown together, we only have the ability to hold up to 2 web cartridges instead of 10. Talk about a hard mode. Finally, with the same hard mode style as the last, we have just plain old Peter Parker. Costume changes with gameplay changes attached to them is a must-have for me in a Spider-Man game, and I was honestly shocked to find that this old game still included them. This made the game so much cooler to me than it already was. All of these costumes can be unlocked in various ways, but outside of the N64 version, there's actually one more costume to play with that can only be accessed via cheat codes, and that is the Amazing Bagman. This is one of my favorite Goofy Spider-Man costumes, and it's a real bummer that it's not accessible in the N64 version for my sake, but it's still worth noting that it was actually included. The only other content cut from the N64 version, aside from a couple cheat codes here and there, are these FMV cutscenes. In place of these, we have these comic-style cutscenes filled with text dialogue to read through, but after I beat the whole game, I went through and watched all these FMVs on YouTube anyways. There's a real charm to them that only a game from this era would be able to bring to the table. For these old FMV cutscenes, and the fact that you have the option to play as the Amazing Bagman, I would absolutely recommend that you play any other version than the N64 copy of this game if you're looking to get the full experience. But as the N64 is my favorite gaming console of all time, I'm more than happy with what I have to work with here. The comic style cutscenes are cute, and the one costume missing out of the other 9 that I have to play with isn't really a big deal, no matter how much I love the look of this guy. Anyways, that's the video. This game is stupendous, and I highly recommend that anyone who loves Spider-Man should play through it. You will not be disappointed, especially if you love old games like I do. Until next week, that's my time. If you want to see more videos by me, consider clicking that subscribe button, as I'm releasing content every single Friday, and I'm very close to 2,000 subscribers here on my channel. If you'd rather not subscribe after just one video, maybe click one of the other ones on screen now. I've got a video covering the terrible Superman 64 game that you might want to check out, and a playlist full of all my other excursions playing through old N64 games, so maybe give it a shot. As for now, my name's Myloe, and I'm out.